I'm Kate Seeley, Vice President of Programs and Communications here at MEI, and we're very honored to have with us today our very own scholar, our only in-house scholar, Marvin Weinbaum and Wadhams of the Center for American Progress, for a discussion about the results and the outcome of the recent Afghan parliamentary elections and their views for the future of democracy and governance in Afghanistan. Both Marvin and Caroline recently returned from Afghanistan, where they were monitoring the elections. Marvin was in Kabul and Caroline in Balkh province in the Mazar-e-Sharif area. And I wanted to take advantage of their first-hand experience to hear their views on the ground. So thank you both very much for joining us today. And thank you all for coming out in the rain. I'm sure many of you saw the reports over the weekend of widespread fraud in the elections. The New York Times reported that the amount of fraud and corruption could affect results in a third of Afghanistan's provinces, calling into question the credibility of a vote that was an important test of American and Afghan effort to build a stable and legitimate government. And I gather there was not only serious fraud in the south, in areas controlled by both the Taliban and President Karzai, but also in the north and the west. So we'll see how this plays out. Of course, this comes at a time of mounting criticism in the U.S. of our efforts in Afghanistan and increasing domestic pressure in Europe on America's European allies to reduce their financing and troop levels. So what impact will these results have on our commitment and our role in Afghanistan? What impact will they have on the European role? And what impact will they have on the future of security and stability in Afghanistan? Are questions that Marvin and Caroline will address today, among others. Marvin, as I mentioned, is a scholar in residence here. He's a professor emeritus of political science at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where he served as the director in South Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. And he has served as an analyst for Pakistan and Afghanistan in the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research. He's focused on his research, teaching, and consultancies that focus on national security, state building, democratization, and political economy. And he's the author or editor of 6 books, including South Asia Approaches the Millennium, Reexamining National Security. Caroline Wadhams is the director for South Asia Security Studies at the Center for American Progress. She focuses on Afghanistan, Pakistan, terrorism issues, and U.S. national security. Prior to joining CAP, she served as a legislative assistant on foreign policy issues for Senator Russ Feingold. Wadhams also worked at the Council on Foreign Relations as the assistant director for the meetings program, and in New York as a research associate on national security issues. Her overseas experience includes work with the International Rescue Committee in Sierra Leone and 2 years in Ecuador and Chile, lucky you. And she's served as an election monitor in Pakistan as well as in Afghanistan. Quickly before we begin, we have another event tomorrow. We are being joined by RAND analyst Robert Hunter, former NATO ambassador, who's going to be talking about building or rebuilding a Gulf security architecture. On Tuesday, October 12th, just after the holiday, we've got retired Marine Colonel Thomas Hammes, who'll be talking about a very interesting topic, which is private contractors in the military and the impact they're having on current and future conflicts. And of course, we have our annual conference coming up on Thursday, November 4th. You all should have flyers with the panels listed on the back, so I hope you can all join us for that. So now please join me in welcoming Marvin Weinbaum.
Thank you, Kate. I might also mention that Carolyn and I are going to be speaking, but we have over here in the peanut gallery several other people who were observers as well with Democracy International. And I know they're going to want to say a few words as well. I hope they will. We've already heard the bad news about the election. Certainly the media has portrayed it as being far less than perfect. Well, why are we interested in it? Well, we are interested, of course, in what actually happened, what difference this is going to make in the composition of the parliament. This was a parliamentary election, of course. We're also naturally interested in what's the implications of this election for our own efforts. There are counterinsurgency efforts. To what extent is Is this going to impede our progress there, or conceivably even further our efforts there? And we also, in a larger sense, are interested in what's the meaning here for the future of democracy in Afghanistan. After all, what we have had here is an important part of the democratic process that we and others had laid out for Afghanistan over the course of these 9 years since we ended Afghanistan. We're getting a picture now of that election process, and as we've already heard and we were reading, it's messy. There obviously have been infractions, but well beyond that. What we refer to as examples of not only retail fraud, but wholesale fraud having taken place. What we don't have now is the results of that election, and we won't have that for another couple of weeks yet, at least even the preliminary results. It's going to be very difficult to measure what its impact is on the counterinsurgency, as well as the democratic process, because so much of that is going to depend on the experiences of individuals and groups in dealing with this electoral process, how they themselves view it. But even with that in mind, I think we recognize that it's the media and others who will put a label on it, who will interpret it as good or bad, as having failed, as having succeeded, or at least being reasonably acceptable. These kinds of judgments are really, in the end, what probably are going to define this election. And I think this is unfortunate in a way, because at least as I look at this election, it's very different than the election that we observed last year, the presidential election, where every vote that took place, every vote that was cast, in a sense, aggregated nationally to determine who is going to lead the country. What we had here was effectively 34 different contests. Each one matching the 34 provinces, each one of them a contest in a multi-member district as to who will go to the parliament. And in the case of Kabul province, that meant 33 individuals, which there were 600 or so candidates. In some other provinces, in Panjshir, I think it was two. So that's the range here.